Hello and welcome back to Tuesday at Dobbs's. Apologies, I'm in 2 layers here. That's because my parents made the shrewd move to keep the heating off while we're away, and it is bitter. Everything's too complicated in this house, and when my dad was telling me how the heating works, I was just nodding along saying, yes, I'll remember, and of course, I don't remember. So it's freezing, it's bitter. Thank you as always everyone for getting in touch. Please do continue to do so, sharing your thoughts and opinions. Comment section below is the best place to do it. And on top of that, if you've got some longer stories, maybe with some photos, you can email hi@tuesdayatdobbs.com. Let's start off. Ian sent me over a very interesting email. This is with regards to the EU and only proposed legislation they may bring in for classic vehicles. In fact, it's worse than that. It's not even classic vehicles. It's any vehicle 15 years or older. Listen to what may happen here in the EU. So this all comes from this YouTube video that Ian sent me. So all the information I'm getting is from here. So full credit to this YouTube channel here, which is very interesting. In essence, from 2024, manufacturers will have to sell a certain percentage of EVs, and this will ramp up year on year. If they don't hit those EV targets, they're going to get huge fines for every non-EV car that they sell. So the EU has a program called Fit for 55, where they want to reduce CO2 emissions by 55%. What they want to do is eliminate all internal combustion engine vehicles from 2050. So doing this, they're going to be calling it managed end-of-life vehicles. So that is any vehicle over 15 years old. They want to try and, in essence, manage it off the roads, manage it out of our ownership. So this is how it's going to work. If a vehicle suffers a major breakdown, listen to this, major breakdown or damage, then you will not be allowed to repair that vehicle once the vehicle is 15 years old. And this comes into play from 2035. So it will be illegal to repair your vehicle once it gets to 15 years old. If it's classed as a write-off or the repair is too big a repair, for example, it needs an engine replacement, a top-end replacement, it will be illegal to repair it. It will also be illegal to sell it on. It must be scrapped. Only a proposal for now, but it is scary what's going on for car and motorbike enthusiasts. Just the thought that your pride and joy could be almost forcibly taken from you if this legislation passes. For me personally, when I read this, I thought, just stay away from my belongings. I've worked hard, I've paid my taxes, I've done everything required for me. This is my belonging. I should be allowed to use my vehicle that I've paid for in whatever way I want to use it, so long as it's taxed and MOT'd, whatever you need to do. I hate retrospective legislation. I hate it when you follow the rules, you buy what you want to buy perfectly legally, and then governments come in and say, oh, by the way, now you can't do this, after you've gone and bought it. It's fine if you say, from all cars made from 2025, for example, by the way, in 20 years' time, you won't be able to maintain them, they'll have to come off the road. That's okay if you tell people in advance, you pre-warn them, but retrospectively bringing it in, I hate that kind of stuff. It means trust in governments, from my point of view, just completely erodes when you get that kind of stuff. Oh, I hope that doesn't come into play, because that is just not fair. It's not fair on people who have their prides and joys and they just want to use them on a Sunday every so often, for example. Move on to something slightly more positive, much more positive. This is from Paul in Australia. Ian, thank you for sending that. From Paul, giddy mate. I have just come back from, pictures attached, 4,000 kilometre trip on my Moto Guzzi V85 TT. I camped out for half the trip and stayed at caravan parks, pubs, a motel and a few mates' houses. I rode the Great Ocean Road in Victoria, went from South Australia and into the Adelaide Hills for a lot of dirt roads, fire trails and tracks on the way, riding home with the Big Desert and Grampians, both in Victoria, Australia. Loads of good twisties, the V85 TT went like a dream, comfortable. Long fuel range and cruise control. Great for the long, straight outback roads. Paul from Australia. You know, Paul, that is the exact magic of adventure bikes. They do everything. You need one bike that will cover all bases, and just look at some of these pics. Bike fully strapped up, panniers, tent on the back there on the passenger seat. You got the skid guard, the sump guard there, little extra touring screen. And just looking ahead there, that shot, I love it, with the yellow twisty sign ahead of you and endless unspoilt scenery, and there onto the dirt tracks. God, Paul, I tell you what, you do not want to be breaking down in these areas of Australia. Oh, that looks fantastic. I love the look of the bike with dust. Paul, what a trip. And the V85 TT. I mean, you've got practicality, you've got long distance ability, and coming in at about 7K for a second-hand one. Very, very tantalising prices for such a competent bike. Paul, thank you. On now to Ryan, USA. Harley-Davidson prices. They are currently, according to Ryan, quite low used Harley prices. Take a listen to this if you're in the market potentially. Freddie, I'm 44 years old, been riding since the age of 8. I recently purchased my 85th motorcycle, a Harley-Davidson Electra Glide. I've never had money to buy a new bike, so all of my bikes have been deals, trades and fixer-uppers. I've always dreamed about owning a big Harley, one of the FLH touring models, but it's always been a dream because of their price. Well, earlier this year, have you ever heard anything more American than this? Earlier this year, I traded in a firearm for a Suzuki Bandit 1200. Great bike, but hard on my back. I sold it and started looking for something else. To my surprise, the used Harley market is very, very well priced currently. The top of the line Harleys from the 1990s can be found for $3,500 to $5,000 easily. That's seriously good value. Even from dealers here in the US, I found an extremely clean Electra Glide Classic 1991 model for $2,200. I'm sure that's about £1,700 top of my head. The guy I purchased it from thought it had an engine issue, but all he did was overfilled the oil tank. I want to mention this to you because it might be worth the effort to have one imported to England. The bike is like nothing I've ever ridden. So comfortable, sounds amazing, and looks beautiful. I understand why older gentlemen prefer these bikes. A few photos included of the bike. I don't think there will ever be a cheaper chance to own one of these bikes. Ryan. Okay, Ryan, you've got my interest here. That's a colossal amount of bike for the money. $2,200. Look at what you get for 2.2K. Panniers, rear seat that looks so comfortable it could be straight out of a sitting room. Fully fared so you get all the wind protection. Beautiful cockpit with a rear rack. Gigantic bike in general. I tell you what, absolutely, Ryan, love your garage as well. Just with that car behind it, I've got no idea what that is. See, Australian and American garages, they're bigger than most English apartments. Lovely bike, 2.2K. Okay, Ryan, what can I find for myself and everyone else in the USA? Bear in mind that they usually state, if you want to buy something from the USA, add on about 30%. I mean, that is very, very rough, what I'm talking about. But add on about 30%, and that will cover you for taxes and shipping the bike back home, wherever you may be in Europe, for example. That's very rough, but add about 30%. What can I find for myself and for all of you? Okay, I think these are the ones I found. Yes. Let's start with an Electra Glide. Electra Glide Classic, 1999 model, 37,000 miles on the clock, and it's $4,900. $900. On ebay.com, all I did just typed in ebay.com, not .co.uk, but .com to get me through to the American site. And up this pops from Reaper Motorcycles. So this is actually from a dealership, and it's $4,900, which translates to £3,900. Under $4,000 for all that bike. Add on about 30%, let's say about 1,200, let's say £1,500 add on in total, and you may well be able to, for about 5.5k, get that bike shipped over to the UK. Surely got to be a bit cheaper doing it that way. That is a very, very tantalizing price. I'm going to do two more. Let's do the Harley-Davidson Fat Bob, because it's a bike that literally an hour ago has just been picked up. This isn't the older model Fat Bob, this is the exact Fat Bob model that I've had, the same engine size, the biggest engine they've ever done on the Fat Bob. It costs £19,000 sterling new. What can I get it for? In the US, this is so good. This is a 2019 model Harley-Davidson Fat Bob. $8,500 US, and that equates to £6,700. £6,700. Imagine going over to the US, doing a biking road trip. So you're heading off. Let's say you're lucky enough to do a 1-month trip. Go over there, fly into wherever this bike is based, buy it, do your 1-month trip on this Fat Bob, and then at the end of it, yeah, you can sell it back to a dealership, for example, but what if you keep it and actually ship it back with you? You've almost got a free holiday there. I think either way, you could buy this bike, enjoy some US biking and sell it for the same price. Or, if you've fallen in love with it, ship it back home and you've probably got a free holiday out of it because you'll have saved so much money, even after the taxes and duties, once you've brought it back to the UK, for example. I'll do one final one. One more. This, bear in mind, this is an auction, private seller this one, and there are no bids. It ends in 3 days' time. I know the price may go up, but this is currently $4,000 US with 3 days left. Harley-Davidson Softail Heritage, private seller, so the best way to get the best deal. And it's equivalent £3,000 sterling with no bids. What may that go for? May it not go? Put in a bid of £3,000 sterling equivalent. Do you have a chance to get this stunning looking Harley Heritage? With prices like this in the US, is this potentially making buying a Harley-Davidson attainable for example, more Europeans? Ryan, fascinating. Thank you so much. Let's carry on with that. Auctions from James. Bonham's Classic Motorcycle Auctions. James, this is equally fascinating. Thank you for this. Have a listen. Freddie, I thought you'd like to discuss the Bonham's Classic Motorcycle Auction that just happened in Stafford. Although there was a Vincent HRD Rapide that made £238,000, I couldn't help but notice how cheap most of the machines were. BSA Gold Stars, Manx Nortons, all at around £10,000. I thought these were at least £20,000 to £30,000. What's going on here? Okay, James, I'll do... Oh, the weather is appalling now. Sorry, just watching a gale outside. I'm going to do 2 bits of insight because 2 people commented on your comment on this from last week's video. This is from 903. Replying to James, well, money isn't as cheap anymore. Quite apart from that, I believe the people who wanted these bikes now have them and are finding that actually riding them, well, let's just say that dependability has improved somewhat since then. And Richard carries on, the classic bike market of the 1950s to 70s is tanking. Only exceptional bikes make the money, as we saw at Bonham's. Let's see what happened. What did happen at Bonham's? Okay, take a look at some of these. I'll start with 1956 BSA Bantam 150cc, sold for £747. How about a bigger one, 250cc BSA C15 Star from 1967, sold for £862. How about some Japanese stuff a bit newer? You know, the funny thing is this goes for way more money. 1963 Honda 125cc CR93 Racing sold for £43,000. Ducati 750 1986 model sold for 18 grand. Even a 1986 Honda NS 400R, another sports bike, sold for 10 grand. So far newer bikes here selling for far more money. This is interesting. 1974 Kawasaki 746Z2 sold for £16,790. And then a 1978 Suzuki GS 1000, so bigger engine Suzuki, looks equally as good as the Kawasaki, equally as good, yet it sold for £4,700. Look at these two bikes side by side. If you're speaking level-headedly and impartially, and you're just looking at two bikes, is the Kawasaki better in any way than the Suzuki? The Suzuki's got a way bigger engine and it's newer, but it sold for £12,000 less. It's so interesting how prices work. You know, the only standout things were the Vincents. There's a 1949 Vincent 1000cc, that was 150k, and a Vincent Rapide at 228k. In essence, the only bikes almost guaranteed to make good money are the old Vincents. I mean, I can't explain it. It's just funny how the used market works. I'll do a couple more here. This is crazy. 1913, so 111 years old. An 111-year-old BSA sold for £11,000. Right next to it, there's a 101-year-old BSA sold for £7,000. Staggering the money they go for. So there's no point. Maybe I would have to wait another 70, 80 years for my Bonneville to go up to £3,000. There's just no point in the used motorbike market unless you've got a Vincent. Things just don't go up in value. I'll do a couple more I found interesting. Look at this. This is a really tantalising one. 1988 Yamaha VMAX 1.2 litres. That sold for £2,300. I mean, that's going to be a usable classic selling for no money at all. Couple more here. We've got an old Triumph 250cc 1935 model sold for £1,380. But right next to it, 1941 Indian 500cc Scout sold for £23,000. The British stuff, relatively speaking, just doesn't sell for good money at all. Some of the prices are, you get more for scrap value. I'll do one final page. There's a very nice looking here. Okay, very nice looking BSA 1000cc 1932. I mean, £9,200 for probably the ultimate BSA of its time, coming up to 100 years old. And it's selling for 9 grand. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be making money, there's not much point investing in motorbikes because the values are microscopic. Moving on, Henry, a newfound lover of biking road trips. Dear Freddie, I was late to motorcycling, taking my direct access course at the age of 30, with no prior riding experience. Like many, watching Charlie and Ewan as a teenager ignited a slow-burning desire, but life took over. A career, a mortgage, a marriage. I put it to the back of my mind then. Then I watched Sons of Anarchy and the Flame Reignited. See, Henry, this was my problem, watching Sons of Anarchy. That's what got me into biking as well. I wanted to be in a biker gang with a Harley-Davidson after watching that. I used to get so overexcited it was actually a bit pathetic. So I feel your feelings there. I carry on, trapped in an unhappy job, an unhappy marriage that was promised to end should I ever consider getting two wheels. But fast forward to 2020, at the age of 30, a career change, and I'm now divorced. Unrelated to the bike, I might add. I was living back with my parents temporarily, and we're coming out of lockdown when I meet my new partner, Nicola, a keen traveller, having explored Asia, Australia and New Zealand, to name a few. I was already mid-direct access course, and thankfully I passed. So I bought a 2016 Triumph Bonneville Street Twin. I decided to take a trip to the Isle of Wight, and that would be adventurous enough as a first outing with Nicola as pillion. We rode then to Barcelona on the Street Twin in 2022. Then we rode over to Montenegro in Italy in 2023. That was a 9-country trip. And we've also been to Wales and various other parts of the UK. So where next? Well, we've bought a 2017 Africa Twin. And in July we will be air freighting it to Anchorage, Alaska, USA. Wow. The visas, tickets and freights are all booked. We then have 12 months to ride the Pan America Highway down through Canada, USA, Mexico, Central America, flying over the Darien Gap, then into Colombia and down through South America until we reach Argentina. Yes, I know, quite the leap. But I don't want to wait until I'm old or maybe not physically able to do enough. The time is now, while I'm young. If anyone would like to follow, we are on Instagram, see here, and that is at 2up2somewhere. Henry. See, it's the standard thing, isn't it, for an adventure lover? Start off, I've heard from a lot of people say this, start off with the bike that aesthetically you like the look of, the Triumph. And then as you get that adventure bug, especially for two people, you move on to the big boys, the big adventure bikes. That's just pure feel-good vibes. Two people heading off, adventuring, seeing the world. It's pure living. Henry, stay in touch. Both of you stay in touch and share some pics. I will definitely keep people up to date with how your American trip goes. But that, Henry, is actually not that old to get into biking. Have a listen to Nick. Freddie, having experienced 2 heart attacks and 1 cardiac arrest over the last 5 years, I decided that if I didn't learn to ride a motorbike and buy one now, it may never happen. Learning to ride a bike from scratch age 63 has been an experience, meeting various characters along the last 11 months. I passed my Mod 2 test last November and bought a Triumph Speed Twin 900. I'm now addicted to constantly reviewing all the bikes, and I'm sure I'll enjoy riding my current bike for a year or two before changing for something else in the future. But as my first big bike, the Speed Twin 900 hits the mark. Next year, Nick, this is brilliant. I love your attitude. It's so inspiring. Not stopping there. Next year, I'm planning on learning to start hang gliding. And a picture of the man himself, Nick. It's brilliant, it's brilliant. On now, such a good attitude, Nick. Seriously, you've made my day with that. On now to Dave. This is with regards to insurance write-offs. I said last week I'll wrap up the conversation about insurance write-offs, etc., but this came in and I wanted to read it. The reason I want to read it, Dave is actually in the insurance industry, so I thought it'd be really interesting for people, including myself, to hear what an insurance insider actually makes of our conversation. What does he think it's really like? Take a listen. Freddie, I work in insurance and there is, I may be guilty, a lot of misinformation being said on here. This is a complex area and needs addressing properly, in my opinion. For a start, listen to this. There is no such thing as buying back your bike or car. It's always your property, so there's no need to buy anything back. Also, replacement, hire, bikes are never free. You as the renter are legally liable for all costs at all times. The hire agreement is subject to the Consumer Credit Act as credit is being extended to you. Be aware of this. I see hires of £30,000 and more for a hired bike. No exaggeration at all. The highest I've seen is £88,000 for a bike. £88,000 for a hire bike, a replacement bike, while your bike gets worked on. 88,000. Also, if you buy a Cat N or X or even S, be very aware of the repair costs. I've done this and it ain't as simple or as cheap as you think. There's usually a reason it's been written off. There are borderline cases, of course, and these are known as constructive total loss. Usually, if the vehicle is under a couple of years old, it will be written off because the repairs are 80% or 60% total loss or more of the purchase price. Dave, it's a very interesting insight. Appreciated. Bike of the week. Australia. Shannon. Haven't heard from you, Shannon, for a while. Good to hear from you. Hello, mate. I sold... Let me check. I've got pics here, I think. Yep, pics attached as I discuss. I sold my Octane. I was just ruining it, commuting in and out of town. I lasted 2 weeks with just one bike, but then I found a Victory Judge for 6,500 Australian dollars delivered to my house from New South Wales. I did a country trip to Canberra for Anzac Day commemorations with the kids, both of them serving naval officers. We did 1,600 kilometre round trip. We came home to Melbourne on the outskirts of the Great Dividing Range, to Lakes Entrance and then Melbourne. Shannon. I know the Australians like Victories. I hear from so many Australians with them. Have a look at this as a pairing. Okay, so this red one must be the Victory Judge, the new bike. Okay, let's have a look at this then. Oh, look at the pic of all of you there. Okay, that's brilliant. Shannon, great to hear from you again. Right, this is the bike of the week, Shannon. Victory Judge. Let's take a look at this. Released in 2012. Victory, of course, is the brand that went bust. Owned by the same company that owns Indian motorcycles. So what you're going to get here is a very good level of build quality. Victory owners rate their motorbikes, despite them going out of business, really, really highly. They say the build quality is very good and the reliability is good. These are high-end bikes. The Victory Judge is 300 kilos, it's 85 horsepower, and it's got a 1,731cc engine. American made, no ABS, no traction control. Have a listen to how premium these were when they came out. I'm just opening up my chart here. Victory motorcycles from 2014. I can't exactly find the Judge, but I can find another similar bike from Victory with the exact same engine. And that's the Victory Jackpot. 10 years ago, this bike, the Victory Jackpot, cost £14,500. Let me put that into some relativity. The Triumph Rocket cost £13,500. So the Victory was £1,000 more than the Rocket. That's how premium and high-end these are. But what can we find from these extremely rare but highly regarded bikes? There are very, very few, but they do exist, I promise you. Go online and you'll find them. And you won't just find them, you will find, I don't think it's too strong to say the word bargain. You will find a bargain. American-made cruiser, 2012 Victory Judge, added 8 days ago, Facebook Marketplace. Look at what I found. I mean, just have a look before I go into detail. Have a look at that side profile. Stunning looking bike. This is the real deal. All of that style, all of that class, and it costs £5,650. If you're a good negotiator, let's say you can get this bike for £5,000, a proper American V-twin, and have a listen to this. Victory Judge, 62 plate black, Cobra exhaust, 1 year's MOT, which is the annual check to make sure it's roadworthy. No advisories on the last one, so it's legit, it's straight, no issues. Very low mileage of just 8,000. In really good condition. Comfortable, powerful bike. Please view it if interested. And offers can be discussed once viewed. Okay, you're getting that for $5,000 if you want that. I don't think there can be many more bikes that offer so much for so little. If I were in the market for a bike, that would be very, very high up. Shannon, Bike of the Week, thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for listening to this week's episode. Have a brilliant week all. Thank you so much, as always, for all of your input. And I'll speak to you in the next one, back in Belvedere.